Mongols. Destruction of Baghdad, Abbasid Khilafah. A vast Mongol, Tatar horde numbering 300,000 warriors, commanded by Hulagu Khan, captured and razed Baghdad to the ground in a week-long massacre. The Mongols cut a swathe through three-quarters of the Muslim lands, destroying the Abbasid Caliphate and occupying Damascus. It was the most devastating sequence of events in the history of Islam. With the destruction of Baghdad and Damascus, the two greatest centers of Islam, only Cairo, the seat of the actual military power of Islam under the Mamluks, remained unconquered. Mamluks were previously involved in battles with the Crusaders, so they had been used to be in battles most of the times. The siege of Baghdad was a siege that took place in Baghdad in 1258, lasting for 13 days from January 29, 1258 until February 10, 1258. The siege, led by Ilkhanate Mongol forces and allied troops, involved the investment, capture, and sack of Baghdad, which was the capital of the Abbasid Caliphate at that time. The Mongols were under the command of Hulagu Khan, brother of the Khagan Monki Khan, who had intended to further extend his rule into Mesopotamia, but not to directly overthrow the caliphate. Monki, however, had instructed Hulagu to attack Baghdad if the Caliph al-Mustazim refused Mongol demands for his continued submission to the Khagan and the payment of tribute in the form of military support for Mongol forces in Persia. Hulagu began his campaign in Persia against the strongholds of Nizari Ismailis, who lost their stronghold of Alamut. He then marched on Baghdad, demanding that al-Mustazim accede to the terms imposed by Monki on the Abbasids. Although the Abbasids had failed to prepare for the invasion, the Caliph believed that Baghdad could not fall to invading forces and refused to surrender. Hulagu subsequently besieged the city, which surrendered after 12 days. During the next week, the Mongols sacked Baghdad, committing numerous atrocities. There is debate among historians about the level of destruction of library books and the Abbasids' vast libraries. The Mongols executed al-Mustazim and massacred many residents of the city, which was left greatly depopulated. The siege is considered to mark the end of the Islamic Golden Age, during which the caliphs had extended their rule from the Iberian Peninsula to Sind, and which was also marked by many cultural achievements in diverse fields. Ancient sources described Genghis Khan's conquests as wholesale destruction on an unprecedented scale in certain geographical regions, causing great demographic changes in Asia. According to the works of the Iranian historian Rashid al-Din (1247–1318), the Mongols killed more than 700,000 people in Merv and more than 1 million in Nishapur. The total population of Persia may have dropped from 2,500,000 to 250,000 as a result of mass extermination and famine. Population exchanges also sometimes occurred. At this point, the Mongols expanded their conquests with minimal or no resistance through Central Asia and Middle East, and were in close proximity to Egypt. Whole ruler was the legendary Sultan, Muzaffar Qutuz, known as Sayyid Qutuz. Sayfuddin Qutuz, the Mamluk ruler of Egypt, received a chilling message from Hulagu, from the King of Kings of the East and West, the Great Khan. To Qutuz the Mamluk, who fled to escape our swords, you should think of what happened to other countries and submit to us. You have heard how we have conquered a vast empire and have purified the earth of the disorders that tainted it. We have conquered vast areas, massacring all the people. You cannot escape from the terror of our armies. Where can you flee? What road will you use to escape us? Our horses are swift, our arrows sharp, our swords like thunderbolts, our hearts as hard as the mountains, our soldiers as numerous as the sand. Fortresses will not detain us, nor arms stop us. Your prayers to God will not avail against us. We are not moved by tears nor touched by lamentations. Only those who beg our protection will be safe. Hasten your reply before the fire of war is kindled. Resist and you will suffer the most terrible catastrophes. We will shatter your mosques and reveal the weakness of your God, and then we will kill your children and your old men together. At present you are the only enemy against whom we have to march. When Salah-ud-Din Ayyubi, Saladin, founded the Ayyubid dynasty in 1174 CE, he formed an elite military corps of slaves called the Mamluks. In 1254 CE, the Mamluks under Ayyubid revolted and transformed themselves from slaves to rulers. The Mamluks too had a formidable reputation as warriors, and despite being heavily outnumbered, Sultan Qutuz decided to resist. He started making preparations to defend Cairo against seemingly inevitable destruction. However, divine intervention in the form of the death of the great Khan Monki forced Hulagu to return home, to decide his successor as per Mongol tradition. The Mamluks too had a formidable reputation as warriors, and despite being heavily outnumbered, Sultan Qutuz decided to resist. He started making preparations to defend Cairo, against seemingly inevitable destruction. However, divine intervention in the form of the death of the great Khan Monki forced Hulagu to return home to decide his successor as per Mongol tradition. A supremely confident Hulagu ordered a force of 20,000 men under Kitbuka Katabga to attack Egypt. Once again Qutuz acted decisively and ordered his army to march out to attack the Mongols. The Crusaders, though bitter foes of Islam, recognized the Mongols as a greater common threat and allowed the Muslim army safe passage and access to supplies. The two armies met on 3 September 1260 AD at Anjala, the Springs of Goliath, in modern-day Palestine. The Muslim army was at risk of being overrun when Qutuz rode to the thick of the action and launched a fierce attack on the Mongols. Shouting, "O Muslims! Wa Islama!" he threw away his helmet so his warriors could recognize him. His actions had the desired effect and inspired his warriors to defeat the Mongols in close combat, something that no army had previously done. The clash between Mamluk and Mongol armies at Anjala, 7 centuries ago, was one of the most significant battles of world history. The Empire of Islam was within a few sword strokes of being wiped out, and Europe, which had already been invaded through Poland, would be next in line to face the wrath of the Mongols. By smashing the myth of Mongol invincibility, the Mamluks secured the future of both the Islamic and Western civilizations as we know them today. In the aftermath of this historic victory, however, Qutuz was assassinated by the agents of Baybars so that he could assume power and become the sole Mamluk ruler. He again defeated the Mongols and drove them out of Syria, and he also subjugated the remaining Crusader kingdoms and made a strong empire. Due to issues of succession, Hulagu could not gather a force strong enough to avenge the defeat at the hands of the Mamluks. Furthermore, there was infighting amongst the Mongols, since Berk Khan of the Kipchak Khanate had turned Muslim, and upon hearing what Hulagu had done to the Abbasids, he sent the following message to Hulagu. He, Hulagu, has sacked all the cities of the Muslims and has brought about the death of the Caliph. With the help of God, I will call him to account for so much innocent blood. The resounding defeat at the hands of the Mamluks signaled the end of the Mongol Empire, with Kublai Khan being the last great Khan of the empire. The Mongols were fighting against the Kipchaks and had suffered defeat in the invasion of Qutuz in 1263. Although further forces were dispatched to fight the Mamluks, they too failed in their attempts to bring down the Muslim Empire. This is the reason why the Battle of Anjala was such a historic event in the history of the world. It finally brought an end to the widespread terror that the onslaught of the Mongols had brought to the world, and stability was restored once again. An interesting sideline is that within 35 years of the battle, Islam had managed to assimilate the Mongols. Hulagu Khan became embroiled in internecine battles with his cousin Berk Khan, who had converted to Islam, and never threatened these lands again. Bazan Khan, ruler of one of 4 descendant empires of the Mongol Empire, Ilkhanate, converted to Islam after his enthronement in 1295. The Great Moguls, who claimed descent from Genghis Khan, ruled most of the Indian subcontinent from the early 16th to the mid-19th centuries. Moral of the story: no matter how much evil a person, or a nation may do, it does not last forever, as Allah the Exalted responds the dua of the oppressed. Anas ibn Malik reported, the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings be upon him, said, beware of the supplication of the oppressed, even if he is an unbeliever, for there is nothing to veil it. Source: Musnad Ahmad 12549. By the hands of the brave Sultan Saif-ud-din Qutuz and his fighters, the Muslim Ummah, as well as part of the Western civilization, was saved from the savagery of the Mongol Empire. Hope you benefited from the lesson of the Moguls. Please make dua for our team, Roots Islamic Homeschool. The History Series.